Hi folks, welcome back. So just yesterday, Anthropic finalized their MCP Apps extension to the MCP standard. And this had been in the works for a couple of months. It was inspired by the MCP UI protocol, and they launched it with a few hand-picked apps in Claude. So this is a more standard variety of what OpenAI did with ChatGPT apps. It's the same idea, which is MCP servers serving up UI that get inlined in the chat conversation with the model. And back then I made this video that goes end to end through bringing up a simple MCP server and seeing it work in ChatGPT dev mode. And then in this video, I covered the differences between the two standards. So unfortunately, while they accomplish the same thing, these are two different APIs. So check out this video for a more in-depth comparison of how they are different. But the TLDR is that OpenAI uses an injected global API object in the browser runtime. So they have an object called window.openai that is used for various capabilities and communication back and forth between your app and the host. Whereas MCP Apps uses a much more general JSON RPC mechanism. The general concepts in terms of the mechanisms for how these apps work are very similar. It is basically just an MCP server with the addition that the tools can serve UI resources like HTML and JavaScript and CSS. So you have this resource URI, you have the UI naming scheme to serve up these UI resources, and that forms part of your tool description. These UI resources are rendered in an iframe that is inlined into the chat, and you need some mechanism to communicate with your host. The host is the chat that is rendering this app. And like I said, in OpenAI's case, it's an API object, whereas with MCP apps, it is JSON RPC. And when do you want to make an MCP app? What makes for a great MCP app? Anthropic have all these scenarios on their blog post, things like data exploration or wizards that let you select multiple things in one UI, looking at a document, etc. I actually like what OpenAI have on their documentation for the Apps SDK, which are these three principles in terms of what makes a great ChatGPT app. They call it know, do, and show. Does it let the user work with some sort of private data the model otherwise wouldn't have? Does it let the user take some real action like buying something or checking out something? Or does it show some data in a very graphical or actionable way that is not suitable for just a plain text response? So I find this to be a much more succinct articulation of the same idea: know, do, show. So I want to try building out a simple toy app and play with it. By the way, they have this GitHub repo for MCP apps. It has the spec and the docs as well as a number of example apps. But over here on the documentation, they walk through the steps to build and test an MCP app. So I want to walk through that. So fortunately, they have a skill to help you make an MCP app. So I'm gonna install that skill and try it out that way. Skills are awesome, by the way. I'm here in an empty folder where I have Claude code running. So I will start by installing this skill. So I gotta add the marketplace first, and then I will install this particular skill. And just to confirm, I have this new MCP Apps skill through a plugin and it's enabled. So let's try to use this new skill to actually make an MCP app, see how it works. Let me try something simple like create an MCP app to show let's see if it can actually fetch some external data. Returns of the S&P 500 over the last 1, 3, and 12 months. So we see that it is invoking the MCP Apps skill to create this app. All right, we are back. So Claude cooked for almost 6 minutes, but it looks like it has this MCP app server built, but it's not up yet. Let's see what's up. Is the server up? I cannot reach it. Oh, that's the port on which it would be up, but it didn't actually bring it up. Yeah, so I should have told it to bring it up. Too many local Python servers running, all the ports are taken, but that's what an agent is for. It kills anything else on the port and brings up a new server. All right, now the server is up. That's kind of the expected reply. And I can see how it actually made a tool call. So here you see it called the tools list method on this MCP server that I just coded up. And then it actually called a tool. It got back the response. Oh, it didn't call a tool. It just called list tools. One of the tools is S&P 500 returns. It has an appropriate description. Okay, so it looks like there is an MCP server that is doing the right thing. Now, the next step is to actually see it in a host like, say, the Claude AI chat. You can also embed this in a local host like Goose or something like that. But let's go to testing your app. Now, very similar to ChatGPT Apps, I'm gonna have to tunnel my local MCP server out to the internet so that Claude can access it. So let me try doing that. I already have Cloudflare D, so I'm just gonna ask Claude Code to make a tunnel. Make a Cloudflare tunnel to expose this MCP server externally. All right, so Claude Code went and created this tunnel. That is where it's live. Let's check it out. Yeah, it does return. So let us close these windows. And now I'm going to put the URL for that into my Claude settings. Okay, go to settings connectors, add custom connector. So let me do that. Okay, so here I am in the settings for my Claude desktop app, settings, connectors, add custom connector, and let me give it a name, S&P 500 returns, and that is my tunnel URL. There's no OAuth, and I'll say add. Okay, so there it is. I see it. And let me see if I can get it to show me a graphical result. Show me the returns of the S&P 500 graphically for the last 1, 3, 12 months. All right, there you go. So it found my little example app. I'm gonna say always allow. Okay, and that is the UI served up by this example MCP app that we just coded up with Claude Code. We tunneled it out to the internet, and here you can see it render inside Claude. Oh, and then it decided to go and make an artifact. So that is some work that Claude is doing for extra credit. But the thing we wanted to see was that it's finding my MCP app for S&P 500 returns, and this UI is coming from that app. All right, so all that is pretty cool, but like I was pointing out in this video, ChatGPT apps and MCP apps have two very different APIs. I think developers' best bet currently for getting some abstraction layer without having to write to two separate APIs is this library called Skybridge. And this is a TypeScript library that targets both ChatGPT apps and MCP apps. So it lets you just write once to some sort of a common adapter library. So this might be your best bet for building an MCP app that works across both Anthropic and OpenAI. All right, so that was a quick end-to-end tutorial of bringing up an MCP app. Definitely a very interesting space. Anthropic, by the way, haven't said anything about monetization or opening it up for submissions from the general developer population, but I'm hoping that'll come soon. And then, of course, we'll be looking to what Google is doing in this area. I'm sure they will have some sort of support for graphical MCP apps. I really hope they adopt the MCP apps, the Anthropic MCP standard for it, rather than cooking up a third different standard. All right, I hope that helps. I'll leave links to all these things in the description. If you like content like this, consider subscribing, like the video, and I will see you next time. Thanks.